Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm McKenna from Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas. And I'm so excited this afternoon to have an event with Eliza Jane Brazier and Stephanie Wrobel. I know sometimes it's a little tricky for our afternoon events for you to join us, but we're thankful to anyone who is watching this afternoon. The usual rules apply. We're going to chat for a little bit, and if you have any questions, you can pop those in the live chat on YouTube or in the comments on Facebook, and we'll get to those in the second half. Before I bring out the authors, I want to mention that we'll be back tomorrow at the same time with Kate Weinberg in conversation with M.L. Rio. So that'll be at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Some cool things. We just announced that we're doing signed and personalized copies of the new Gunny Rose book by Charlene Harris. We'll have those. So those are available for pre-order. Also, we have a really cool event with the debut author next Tuesday, I believe, February 2nd. Elle Cosimano's book, Finlay Donovan. I'm blanking on the name now. Anyway, Finlay Donovan will get it for you. It's fantastic. It's a light, fun mystery, and we'll have signed copies of that. If you haven't already heard, we have a really cool new subscription box, Murder by the Box. You can find that at murderbythebox.com. There's 3 different types of subscriptions: Cozy Corner, Best of the Month, and Crime Fiction Legends. And so far, the feedback for our January box has been pretty terrific. So if that sounds good to you, you can visit murderbythebox.com. We do have signed book plates for both of these authors' books. If you're interested in ordering, I'm going to drop a link in the comments right now. You'll be able to read more about both the books and order from those links. And like I said, put in some comments, questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. We'll be getting to them in a little bit. Okay, so now for the main attractions, we've got Eliza Jane Brazier joining us today. Hi, Eliza.
Thank you so much for coming. And thank you for us also.
All right, so Eliza is an author, screenwriter, and journalist. She's here today to talk about her adult debut, If I Disappear. She currently lives in Los Angeles, where she is developing If I Disappear for television. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Okay, so let's add in Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
I should say newly Edgar Award nominated Stephanie. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
All right, so Stephanie grew up in Chicago, but has been living in the UK for the last 3 years with her husband and dog, Moose Barkwinkle. She has an MFA from Emerson College and has had short fiction published in Bellevue Literary Review. Before turning fiction, she worked as a creative copywriter at various advertising agencies, and she is here today to talk with us about Darling Rose Gold, which is brand new in paperback. Oh, look at that. I'm so prepared.
We couldn't have planned that better.
All right, so like I said, questions in the comments. I'm going to duck away. I'm going to let these two chat for a little bit, and I'll be back just a little bit later to go through those questions. Y'all have fun.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, I'll start. Yeah, is that okay? Asking you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, people may or may not know this, but Steph was actually supposed to do, I believe, like a U.S. tour, like in the U.S. right last year.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, last March. It got canceled like the week before because that was when the pandemic like seriously hit hard in the U.S.
Yeah. So then I guess it took a whole year to kind of get it back on track. Is that right? Like,
yeah, I mean, we always wanted to do events with all of the bookstores that we had to cancel with, but it was just like everybody was just like so panicked, understandably, about the pandemic that it was like nobody was like, "Hey, let's go to a bookstore,"
Yeah, for sure.
Event. So now it's just because the paperback just came out this week that it made more sense to like reschedule some of these events with these bookstores.
Yeah, that's true. That does make sense. Well,
Yeah.
I'm really glad that I get to talk to you. I obviously read this book, like loved it. It is so innovative. I guess like what I like a few of the things that I really love about it, like it's like a two-hander. So there's 2 characters, there's a mother and daughter, and they're both super compelling. And what I really love about these characters are that they're not the normal characters that we see, I would say, like in thrillers. Like usually you sort of see some sort of like a high-powered like executive or someone in New York or someone in, LA. Like these are people that live in Deadwick. What state is it?
Illinois, yeah.
Illinois, yeah. I guess the Chicago connection.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, like for example, like just like the little details, the fact that like Rose Gold has bad teeth for the entire novel. Like, I feel like even though it seems like crazy to say that's such a big thing, I feel like it kind of is in a way, because it's like you just don't see those kind of characters. And we always try to like center like the beautiful kind of like aspirational characters. And I think that is such a cool element to it. And then the other thing that I really love, without kind of giving too much away, is like the revenge side. I think that all of us can relate to these characters, and that we all kind of go through, I guess, like hardships. We all like kind of get bullied or mistreated by people. And there's like an element of wish fulfillment, I think, when you sort of see like this character kind of like push back, and you're like, I couldn't do that in real life. Like, we all know that, because obviously in the real life, there's consequences. But like in the book, like it's kind of just cool when she just like sort of goes up and you're like, oh my gosh, is she really going to do that? Like, holy, I don't know. Anyway, so I loved it. So I guess my first question is, where did this book come from?
So I first heard about Munchausen by proxy from my best friend, who is an elementary school psychologist in Colorado. And she had told me about it. She has experience with it through some of her own, some of the students there. And nothing as severe as what I've depicted, thank God. But she told me about it, and I just was immediately intrigued, because it is a mental health disorder. So it wasn't as, straight cut as just regular child abuse. So I started doing my own research, and I was really surprised to learn that it's usually women who have it, and often mothers. Oh, wow. And, when we think of violent abuse, like, we typically think of men. And so the fact that this illness is so dominated by women, I was like, what is going on here? And so the more that I researched, I was just really curious, like, do these women actually know that they're doing wrong by their children, or do they think they're doing what's best for them? And that was, so even though Rose Gold is the titular character, it was really Patty and getting inside her head and like walking around in there that drew me to the story.
I love her voice, and I think you do such a good job of like making readers understand her thinking. Like when she talks about like having that new baby and like listening to it breathe. Like, I have a dog, and like I can relate to that, because I just get such anxiety about like something bad's gonna happen. And like, when you have like a puppy and it like swallows things, and you're just like panicked, like, oh my gosh, I'm sure my dog's gonna die. Like, it's my fault. Like, so I totally felt like I got it in like a way that, is scary, because you're like, at the end of the day, you're kind of, I guess, doing something from a person that maybe you shouldn't really, you don't want to understand too well, but
I think so many of us, it's like, oh, well, those people, and like, I would never do anything like that. And like, yes, hopefully most of us never would do anything that Patty has done. But I do think like that was the interesting challenge to me as a writer, is like, for a chapter, for a paragraph, for a sentence, can I make a reader go like, oh, wait, like, I see why she did that here. And I do think that the scene that you pointed out, for example, like, being a very worried parent of a newborn child. I don't have kids, but based on my sister's experience, based on like all my friends who have kids, like the day that you take that baby home and you're just responsible for it, like you can see that, how that concern can kind of like snowball into something more. And like, for some parents, it's like, okay, like we figure it out sooner than later. But for others, it's like, you struggle for a while. And like, who wouldn't want a doctor or nurse right there to be like, you're doing okay. The kid's still alive. The kid is flourishing.
Yeah. So. Or like, you're doing well, like what she loves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, what's so strange about the illness is that's the motivator behind it, is to get love and attention from doctors and nurses and people within the medical community. A lot of the perpetrators have medical backgrounds themselves. They're often nurses, which is like very terrifying, but that's why they're able to fool them for so long. So yeah, it's just like the thing that I think it's not so easy to say, villain, bad, evil, like people who have Munchausen by proxy almost always have their own childhood histories of abuse and neglect. So it's, they start out as victims themselves. And then like, I just think it's interesting who grows up, who has a history of childhood abuse and then grows up to be a perfectly functional adult and loving parent, and like who, takes a left turn and why. So those were just some of the things I was interested in.
Oh, that's cool, because I can see how all of that, what you just said, came into play in the novel, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it definitely doesn't make for the lightest reading, but you
made it like fun though, because you have a good way of ending your chapters, like always on like kind of like a cliffhanger. You know what I mean? And they're they're really punchy. Like it's very like unique, you know, but also good.
You know, I wanted to talk about, so I want to segue into your book. You started to talk a bit about setting, which I warned you ahead of time. And I was like, well, first, maybe I'm interested to hear how you describe your book to readers, maybe for people who haven't read it yet.
Yeah. So my novel, If I Disappear, it's about like a woman who was obsessed with a true crime podcast. And she's kind of like, her life is not really going the way that she, I guess, like wanted, and she doesn't really know. She feels like adrift, like she's recently divorced, like she loses her job. She doesn't really have like friends or the same connections, like I think, which can happen sometimes when you're older. And you kind of, I guess, you know, you get divorced or things like that. So she really connects to like this podcast, and she's kind of like obsessed with it. And then the host of the podcast goes missing. And because she feels such like a kinship and friendship with this person, like she actually takes it upon herself to go and investigate using like all the knowledge that she's garnered from like listening to all these podcasts, right? And she ends up in this really sort of rural area of Northern California, which is based on a real place.
Yeah.
Or I guess is a real place. I don't know, based on, because it doesn't exist. But yeah, and she meets this kind of like out there cast of characters and just gets like involved in this mystery, and it's like totally like more than she bargained for, and you know, thrills ensue.
Yeah, so this book, I love so many things about it, but like the first thing that I want to talk about and the first thing that jumped out at me was just like the setting is so creepy and like so bizarre, but also so believable. It's just this like rural place where it just feels like the wilds have overtaken everything. Like they've just like seeped into like the characters, the plot. It's such a big role. And so I admit, like, as I was reading it, I put down the book and I Googled like Happy Camp, it's Happy Camp, right? Happy Camp, California. And when I found out it was a real place, I was like, oh my God, like I had never heard of it. So I'm assuming a lot of readers haven't. So I'm wondering if you have any personal connection, how you found out about it, like why there?
Yeah, so it's actually like an interesting story, which I won't make too long. But you know, I lived in London. You live in London now, right?
Yeah.
I lived there for like 10 years. I was married, had like a whole different life, and then my husband passed away. And I kind of like tried to hang out in London for a while, like sort of like trying to make it work. But eventually, like I just realized like I need to like separate from this because otherwise I'm never gonna get out from underneath this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So I decided that I would move back to America. I used to ride horses, which is another thing we have in common.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We're living twin lives.
I know, like we're parallel universes. Yeah, so I was like, let me go back to working with horses. Like I got a job at like a dude ranch, right, in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking like I'm gonna have this like magical healing summer, like working with animals. You know, it's just like a sort of like limited time job. You're gonna be like doing customer service. It's gonna be this great magical summer. And I arrive at this ranch like in the, I guess like it's called like the preseason, so before there were guests, to kind of get everything ready. And like upon arrival, like I immediately was like, oh, this isn't what I expected. And it kind of like snowballed from there. And it's like just, I mean, it's like a crazy story. Obviously, I think truth is stranger than fiction. But it was just a really wild experience. Like you're in such isolation. And when you're in that kind of isolation, you sort of rely on the people around you, I guess, to keep you sane. And sometimes if those people are maybe not the safest people, like it can be pretty like crazy pretty fast.
Wow.
So it was just like this super intense experience. It was like almost like a psychological experiment. And like part of me was like, you should leave. Like there was like a point, like I think a few weeks in when I like texted my parents because they thought I was having like this great magical time. And I like texted my mom and was like, look, like I don't want to, because when you're in it, like you feel like you're crazy. So I was like, look, I don't want to like kind of like alarm you or anything, but just so you know, like things are kind of different here. And I might come home at any time. Like, I don't know. Like, just so you know, like,
oh my God.
Like, just to prep
believe this
I like want to just like
on a true story. This is like,
I mean,
like,
yeah, it's not like obviously it's like it is fiction, but the feeling and all that emotion stuff like that you talk about that's like infused into the novel and the setting does come from like a real place and a real experience. So I lasted for like 6 weeks there, and then something happened that really obviously crossed the line. And I was like, I need to leave because now it's seriously dangerous. So I left.
Oh my God. I was not.
I know, yeah, that's where I got the setting for my novel. So
Jesus. Yeah, seriously. I just remember thinking, like, as I was reading, I was like, this is such an insane story. You know what? Like, real life is always crazier than fiction. It's like, you know, whenever people ask, like, if Rose Gold is, like, based on a true story, it's just like the true stories that I researched and the ones that I have heard about since from people who have read the book and been like, I know someone who knows someone, are far crazier than anything that goes on in the book. Because it's just like, it's almost unbelievable, you know?
Well, that's the thing too. I guess it's like, I mean, I have I guess like still like a friends group of like a support group of people who are there because like we can talk about it and understand it where other people can't. But it's like in real life, like stuff like just goes up and down like so quick. Like there were so many things that would happen like every day that it was just like, whoa, like this is like, I mean, it's not like, it's hard to like, the novel is all neat and organized.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to go like,
it's a lot easier.
Real life is just a mess. Oh my gosh. All right. So let's switch back and forth. So we're going to switch back to you. Okay. Actually, okay. One thing that I'm interested in is like, this was your MFA thesis, the book, like the fiction novel.
Yes.
Okay. So, what challenges did you face when writing this novel?
I think the hardest part was getting Rose Gold's voice and character development right, because, well, for the voice, she's just like so sheltered and she doesn't have the same, you know, pop culture references, like colloquialism. So it took a few drafts for me to realize like I need to keep pulling myself out of this, you know, like I need to really try as best as I can to imagine the lens of somebody who's basically lived her entire life with one person and doesn't really have much real world experience, doesn't know how to interpret sarcasm, can't interpret a joke from, you know. So that, and then, with the character development, you know, in some drafts, she started to grow a backbone too early, and others, she was a pushover for too long. So just kind of trying to thread that needle was tricky.
And then wait, I guess like with that question, this is just like part of the same question, but what was like the easiest thing?
Patty's voice.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I know, it's just probably alarming, but it was like, well, her character, I mean, I don't want to like give too much away, but like her character, she doesn't undergo that much character development. And she just has a very like dry sort of sense of humor, which is very much like my own. And she just like, honestly, just like kind of came out of me like pretty fully formed, I would say. I was definitely like in most of the editing that I did, it was the lion's share was Rose Gold stuff.
Oh, that's so interesting because they do really have very distinct voices. Like my next book that I'm working on, I do like 2 different voices, and I'm really like not sure if that's like not like to. I mean, you know, I'm sure it will be by the time it's published. Don't worry. But like, you know, that's like tricky. Like it's hard to like just write in your own voice.
It's really hard. So for my second one, I'm doing 3. Which is like the worst idea I've ever had. I was like, from now on, 1. I'm never doing this again. It's so hard. But like, truly, I mean, it's hard enough like to come up with, I mean, just like one somewhat distinct voice. But then, you know, like the more that you put them next to each other, it's like you can tell if they sound too similar. So
boy. Can you talk about that project at all while we're just on the subject of it?
Sure. So it is a book about 2 sisters named Natalie and Kit, who have
my mom's name is Kit. And my niece just got born named Natalie Kit.
Oh, really? Oh my God. That's weird. Well, hopefully they have no experience with any of the things that my characters are.
Okay, so go on. As you were saying, sorry.
So it's fine. So 2 sisters named Natalie and Kit, and they haven't spoken in 6 months because Kit has moved to a private island in Maine to join this self-improvement program called Wisewood. And so Wisewood has these extremely strict rules. While you're a guest there, there is no contact with the outside world, no internets, no phones, no sex, no touching. But Wisewood says it's all in service to a greater goal, which is achieving their maximized selves. So from the beginning, Natalie, the older sister, is like super skeptical about this and like, I don't know about this. But she lets her sister do what her sister's going to do because she's constantly always been the naysaying one. Until she gets this email from someone at Wisewood who threatens to come out and reveal a secret that Natalie's been keeping from her sister for years, unless Natalie goes and tells her herself. So the book starts with Natalie heading to Wisewood with the intention of coming clean with her sister, and the story unfolds from there.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so awesome. And also, my mom, Kit, would love that, I think.
She would love Wisewood.
It's going so well. No, she would love this kind of, because it's like kind of very like culty, can I say? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's like super, that sounds super interesting. Also, I love like how you just like pitched that like so well. Like you just had like, I mean, how often do you talk about it?
I'm just starting to, just because of these like few paperback events, like I was like, all right, I need to get my story together, because until like this week this is like my like third time running through it. So I've really been thinking it through. So thank you. But before that, I would just be like, it's about sisters and a cult and magic, and be like, you guys can figure out the rest.
Wait, hold on.
I mean, I think describing your book is like the most, until you have it down pat, it's like so painful. Because it sounds so bad if you don't know, like, if you haven't, like, boiled it down to that nugget.
It's hard not to, like, get, like, what I, like, say, like, in the weeds. Like, to just be, like, start, like, talking about the character. Like, and then, and also, but you know what about her, though? Yeah.
What I found helpful, actually, is I've been working, my editor's been asking for help with, like, the back jacket copy. And so now that we've got that pretty set in stone, I'm like, okay, well, I'll just take, like, a few sentences from that. And
that's a good one.
Pro tip for any writers out there. But so that's the second book. Are you early on yours, or do you want to talk? I mean, do you want to talk
I can tell like a little bit, because like I haven't done to the back jacket copy, whatever it's called, back jacket.
Some mixture of those words.
Okay, I am really excited about it. So I obviously I wrote it this year. It was like it was such a nightmare writing this year. And it was like at first, like it was not working for like the whole year. Like I was like the most frustrating thing in the world. Like I was like crying all the time, especially because like already you're feeling such anxiety this year. So I think like having that and being like, this isn't working. Like this is, and I'm writing it over and over. And then finally I kind of like had a breakthrough, I guess, like a couple of months ago, where like I was like, well, I guess like breakdown is more correct. I was like, this is not working. I need to like change it. I can't like keep trying to make this work. Like I need to like do a drastic overhaul. So like I changed the pitch, sent it to my editor. She was on board. She's awesome. Jen Monroe at Berkeley. And then I like rewrote the whole book in like 5 weeks. I just like worked every single day. And like powered through it and was like, oh my gosh, like it was crazy, but I was like, hopefully it makes sense. And then I sent it to my editor and she really liked it. And I sent it to one of my friends who's an author and she really liked it too. So that was awesome. But so like what it is like, I guess because this has been such a heavy year, I wanted to write something that was like more like almost like a comedic thriller, like that's like fun. So I will tell you, I guess, just the title and like my imaginary tagline, which I'm sure they won't use. The title is Good Rich People. And my imaginary tagline is There Aren't Any.
That's good. I am a sucker for like anything about like any stories of like rich people behaving badly, like Succession, Billions, like in.
Yeah, no, this is like, I mean, because the thing is like, I guess it's like, it's definitely like, there's like an aspect of that. It's just talking about the rich poor divide. It takes place in LA. And there's also like, because when I lived in London, we did not have money. Obviously, London is a very different country, or sorry, England is a very different country. So like, if I had lived in America, who knows what would have happened, but like, because the state kind of like does help you out. Like, but I lived like below the poverty line for the entire time that I was married to my husband for like 7 years. So like when I first was writing the book, like I was writing a lot about that and like my own experiences. Yeah. And that was just super heavy. That's probably why I was crying all the time. But then I kind of like added, so I did like two perspectives. So like I like used like some of that. And then I also used like I guess also from like people in England, but just my experiences with super wealthy people. How they're
positive.
They're all really awesome. And
that sounds really interesting. Yeah, to get both sides of the coin.
Yeah. But again, like it is like very much a funny, like fast moving, like crazy book. So
I am all for like more humor in suspense and thrillers. Like everything doesn't have to be just like so. I mean, I don't know. I think that's how we get through so much of life and so much of tragedy. Is at least I do, and like all the people that I know and I'm close with too. Like you can't even in the bleakest of circumstances help but have humor leak in some points.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like especially like this year, and I feel like that's like been like what a lot of people have been sort of connecting to as far as like thrillers on TV, like stuff like what's the one with Kaylee Cuoco that came out? She's like the flight attendant.
The flight attendant?
That kind of thing where it's just like dark, like, you know, dark thriller, humor, comedy.
Have you watched that?
I actually have not watched. I watched the beginning, but I thought it was really cool. And I love Kaylee Cuoco because she's the worst.
I haven't seen it either, but I don't know.
I think we need to get to that question. So you used to read the Thoroughbred books.
Sorry?
You used to read the Thoroughbred books when you were younger. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
You're like, this is coming out of nowhere. I used to do that. Oh my gosh, I used to write
for Christmas one year. I got a hand painted light switch with a horse on it. That's like the level of horse obsession that I was going through at the time. But yes, I read like the entire Thoroughbred. You know, I'm assuming you read them too. You know,
yeah, like Wonder the horse
of them.
Clicked to my mind when you said, like, when I read that in your bio or whatever. I was like, or on your website, I was like, oh my gosh, what? I haven't thought about those in so long.
I was like in the 95th percentile for height in 3rd grade, and I was like, I'm going to be a jockey when I grow up. I just know it.
Yes. I wanted to do like show jumping. Also, my like third book that is not even picked up or anything that we're working on right now is about the horse world. So hopefully that gets picked up.
Is it? Oh my God.
Is it my turn for a question or yours? I can't remember.
I want to take a turn because I have a question about second person.
Dope.
Which your book is written in. For people who don't know, the protagonist, Sarah, is speaking to this missing podcast host, Rachel, which really gives the story such a claustrophobic and like even more obsessive feel. And I'm wondering if you always envisioned writing it in second person, like from first draft, did it eventually get there? How'd you land on that? And like, what were the challenges? I feel like even writing a short story in second person would be hard. So I think it's like such an awesome challenge for a writer.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the whole genesis of this project probably kind of like will explain, I guess, that how that happened more clearly in a way. So I had like the setting in my mind, but like I didn't have really a hook, let's say. And I was still like working a job like with horses and all this kind of stuff in Orange County. Like I was living at home with my parents, like driving an hour back and forth for this job. And I was like, this isn't working. Like I'm working like 6 days a week. Like I don't have any time to write. And I was like, you know what, I want to kind of try again and start over. So I ended up moving to LA, like found like a horse job there and was like actually looking to work in television. So I was like researching all of that, like reading all these books. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing this is a really like getting into the novel writing industry is difficult, but like this is like even more difficult because there's no clear path. Like every path that you can kind of take, there's like no guarantees. Like if I write a novel, I send it to an agent and then it goes from there. That's everyone does, you know, the same thing. Like for film, it's like impossible. So I had this cool idea about like, you know, because I listened to true crime podcasts. I had this cool idea about like, you know, what if a podcast host went missing? I thought that was a cool idea, but I was like, I can't sell a script because I'm like nobody.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe I can make it as a novel, right? So I kind of took those two elements like that, I guess my experience in the woods and then my hook, but it still like wasn't immediately clear, I guess, how to do it because like, you know, the fact of the novel is that like, you know, Sarah, the protagonist, and then there's Rachel, who's like the victim. Like, we don't know Rachel. Like, there's sort of no way to like, I guess, like have her on the page, right?
Yeah.
So I read the book by Carolyn Kepnes, You, which is like sort of famously a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that and I was like, obviously that's in second person. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like, that's how to do it, right? Like, and it also has, I guess, it also has the kind of obsession quality as well that like made this book work. So like, once I got that piece, like it actually that wasn't like a difficult, I guess, part. Like that like unlocks the voice and then it like made this whole book thing like possible. Like from there, it was like, okay, now I know what to do, you know? So I wouldn't say it was really like hard and I didn't think about it as being in second person. I was just like, okay, this is the key that is going to make this idea work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think I wasn't like in my head about it. There was other things that were hard. Like the hardest thing was probably because like writing a mystery, like knowing who should be the bad guy.
Yeah. We're getting into like more craft questions here, but so did you know like the ending when you started or no, you just,
I rewrote the second half of the book, like 40,000 words, like 3 times, with every time a different villain. Like I would, I feel like I've said this before, but like I don't know if I like maybe I shouldn't be writing thrillers, but I feel like if I know who's the bad guy, like I'll probably tell you.
You're like, yeah, let it out.
I'll be like, just so you know, it's him. But like, just
it's not him, I swear.
Do it, but just you're like stay with me. But yeah, so I didn't really know, and I think I also tried to like force like different endings in a way, like, and then once I landed on the one that felt like right, like I like immediately. Oh, which we'll talk about this too, but like getting agents. But like I like immediately sent it to agents because I was also like I was working at that time with horses. I was doing horse camps at this barn in Los Angeles, and I was working like 7 days a week, like long hours with kids and horses. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't. Like I was waking up early to work, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I got to the end of the novel and was like, I hope someone likes it. Bye bye. I never. You know what I mean? And then I came back
like on your voyage.
I know. I was like, here, let's send it to everybody. Bye. Like I hope I never see you again. And then it was like, no, it did come back. But I want to hear about how you got your agent.
So as you mentioned, I wrote the book for my thesis, and so I took it to my thesis committee, which is just a fancy way of saying 2 people sitting in a room, like in the professor's office. These 2 who are also writers themselves. And they were pretty positive with their reviews of it. They thought they suggested I've been working on it for a year and a half, probably. And yeah, I reached out, and the agent process went really quickly. I was very surprised because everybody.
Who is your agent?
Who is my agent? Maddie Milburn. She's
in London. She used to be my agent.
Oh, did she?
Yes. When I had a YA deal. Yeah, no, she's amazing. She's like one of like obviously like the most intelligent, like best in the business. Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
like you've obviously met her and hung out with her. She's good at, like, did you have multiple offers and she like wooed you?
Yeah.
She's really
I had 5, and I either met with in person or talked to each of them. But she was, I mean, she's like so good at selling.
Really? And
if she can sell me as good as she sells herself, like great. And she did. So she's been a very good choice for my career. So I'm super happy with her.
That's cool too. That you're like you live in London, right?
Yeah.
My brains. What part of London do you live
in? The western side. Do you know Maida Vale?
I used to live in Latimer Road. Yeah, I know Maida Vale.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, kind of close to you.
Yeah, that's not too far.
Yeah.
That's Latimer Road. Is that like Notting Hill-ish?
It's like between Notting Hill and Shepherd's Bush.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, almost like by
very relevant to all of you with their London knowledge. Like, I don't care. Just say
what's important to me though. This is okay. So you wrote the book in a year and a half. You had the people with your MFA, and then did you do a lot of edits with your agent?
Not a lot with the agent, actually. There were like a few plot holey things, like in the lead up to the ending that we fixed, but it was less than a month, I would say. And then she was just, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I guess like what I find interesting though is because you talked about trying to get the voice right. Was that when you were working on it for your MFA?
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me that even though you weren't like planning on it being published, like you took that level of care to make it like, you know?
I am a perfectionist, if nothing else. No, but I knew going into grad school that I wanted to, like my biggest and only real goal was like, I want to write a novel by the time I finish it. It was the first one I've ever written. And so
you're like making any writer who's watching this.
I know. It's like, you're not supposed to say that. And like, you know what, my professor who ended up being on the thesis committee was like, nobody ever gets their first novel published. Just like put it in a drawer. It's good writing experience. So that was like honestly what I chalked it up to. But I was like, you know what, worst case, I get a graduate degree out of it. So it's not like all bad. And like, when people will be like, why did you pick Munchausen by proxy to like launch your career? And I was like, it's very cute that you think that I had that much strategy going into it.
That's honestly, that's amazing. And like, that says like, I feel like so much about you. I mean, yeah, like that's really cool. I mean, that you put so much care into something. I really think that like saying, I mean, that you're like a perfectionist. I mean, that's awesome.
I mean, I thought, of course, like hoped I was like best case. I was like, maybe I'll get an agent out of it. So I really was like putting my best foot forward, like sometimes I wish I had taken more of your approach and been like, this is good, like, let's ship it. Because I was like, I must have read that thing like 700 times before I would even send it out to a single agent. So it was like, I mean, I will never read that book again. That's for damn sure.
Man, and I wrote so many books before I got like an agent. I had YA books like under my I guess my late husband's name. And yeah, like even before that though, like I always like wrote like terrible stories. Like, did you write like at least like terrible stuff for yourself?
I wrote terrible. So, like MFA programs are primarily geared towards short stories. And so I was writing these short stories through like 2.5 years of grad school that were like routinely panned. Like there was this one guy who would write like cliche and trite on like every single page of my stories. I was like, all right, I get it, sir. Like enough is enough.
Thank you, sir. Oh, that's awesome.
So yes, it was not just, I wasn't like some wonderkin that was like, and I opened my notebook and here comes a fully fleshed story. Like there was a lot of like hard work that for sure went into it to make it, sing. But yeah.
Cool.
So I want to ask about true crime podcasts. Now I'm sure you've been asked about this a ton, but my question is, had you listened to a lot of them before writing the book and then during and after? Like, how did your relationship to them change, like with If I Disappear coming into existence? And what about now? Like now, are you just like, I'm so done with them? Or
I was listening to this morning, a really good Dateline that just came out. It's called While She Was Sleeping. Oh my gosh, it's intense. Yeah, so I think that my my true crime podcast journey is kind of like different, I would say.
It's such a funny way of my crime podcast.
Well, it's like let's see. No, but so after my husband died, my husband's death was like an unlawful killing. So we like had to go to like this coroner's court, like go through this whole like kind of crazy situation. And a lot of like what you're doing when you're going through something like that, like through grieving and stuff like that, is like you're trying to like unpack like what happened. And I think that you almost like obsess over it. And it is like a true crime podcast, like the way that you're being like, oh, he went here, he did this happened, he's talked to this person, like trying to figure out like what actually happened, like who is responsible. Like you always feel guilty. So I think like after he died, there was a really dark year, I feel like, where I watched a lot of Dateline. And I think like partly because I felt like there was no place like in the world where I could like sort of address like the trauma that I had been through. You can't really talk about it with other people. Like it's dark, it's scary, like people don't want to talk about it. So I kind of like found comfort in like watching these, like what you would say, like horrible stories for like hours. You know what I mean? It's like a space where it's like kind of like safe to like, I guess, like, like address those topics. And so then from there, like I discovered true crime podcasts, which like there's obviously like the sort of the bigger ones like Crime Junkie, My Favorite Murder. And then it went to kind of a different thing because with those, these are, the past 5 to 10 years, I think the whole like environment around like true crime has changed because of these people. Like there are these women who are super smart, super funny. They talk about like mental health. They, are like just super open with their lives and sharing, all this kind of stuff. And they've created, because of who they are, they've created like this really like supportive, amazing community around true crime. So I kind of started to get like, I feel like I'm like more involved in that. Like I would go to live events, obviously, when there used to be live events. And I was just like blown away by like how like open everyone was, like how like kind of like almost like joyful, like the atmosphere was like so friendly. Like me and my mom went to like a Crime Junkie live event. Like we didn't have seats together because it was sold out. And like both of us like started like conversations with our seatmates. Like they just like talked to us and like told us like, oh, like mine were like from Utah. They had come all the way to California to see this, like, all this, and everyone's just like so friendly. So I think that kind of like brought it to another level for me where like I just really started to appreciate the community and like, again, like those like amazing, I think, women. And then there's people like Michelle McNamara, like people who are like so empathetic, who like sacrifice their lives, like trying to kind of like solve these crimes. So yeah, it was like around that time that I actually wrote this novel. Like it's heavily influenced by like those podcasts, like the ones that I love. And I still like, there was probably like a period right after I wrote it where I was kind of like, oh, I can't listen to like these anymore. But now I'm like back on it again.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you would go to the events and talk to different people, did a lot of people have like personal experience like yourself with it, or was it just like...
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, maybe they did. I think everyone does have. And like, this is something that I talk about with true crime, like, because people always go like, why are women drawn to this? And I think part of it is the community, and it's like become like this female community because of these female creators, but also women are far more likely to have experienced trauma or to be the victims of violent crimes.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, that also like can draw people in, but it's definitely not something where you like sort of immediately go in and everyone starts like, you know, confessing their...
Yeah. Right.
But it's just like you get, because, you know, the thing is like, I think it also draws a lot of people who are super empathetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people who can't really look the other way. Like I kind of talk about this, like Sarah kind of talks about this in the novel. It's like people who kind of can't ignore all these terrible things that happen in the world. You know what I mean? And sometimes that can be like almost like stillifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes me feel so better, like rebranding it that way, because, you know, a lot of the commentary, I'm sure you get it all the time, is like, how could you watch that stuff? Like, why are you interested in that? You're so weird. It's so creepy. It's like exploitative. And like, obviously it can be those things. I'm not giving it a blanket pass, but I do think like there is a certain empathy to it that is just like, I just want to understand, you know, because it's like, it's incomprehensible, but it's like that's like the writer in me, that, or maybe just the human in me that's like, no, I need to understand this. Like, how can, and sometimes there is no logic or explanation to it.
Yeah,
it's, you know, it's just like, it's just picking at that thread.
I mean, yeah, no, it is true. Like, it's not for everyone, and I totally would never like say, because some people just aren't obviously into it. They don't want to be, you know, if they don't want to participate or like listen to those kind of things, that's totally fine. Like, I totally get that. It's everyone's brains work differently. And then I guess like for me personally too, like there's definitely been moments where I thought, okay, like what if somebody like actually looked into what happened to my husband? Like, what if they made a podcast about it? Like, how would I feel? Like, especially the more joke podcasts. But like, I think that ultimately the thing that was really difficult in a way with my husband's death was how many times people got it wrong. And like people would report stuff that was completely false. Or like I said, I mean, like the coroner found like that it was an unlawful killing, but like people want to like make it about like that it was something else, or he had an accident right before, so that they get the facts completely wrong. The thing about these people is that they do actually like take like a duty of care to like get those like facts right, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely like, you know, I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but I think there's a lot of different layers to it. And I also think that it's definitely not something that everyone has to feel the same way about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. It's like you've been talking about this for a while
now. Okay, so we have questions, I think, that are going to pop up. Or
okay.
Okay, cool.
Aha.
Ta-da!
Welcome
All
back.
right, so I'm not muted now. Okay, yeah, so we do have questions. I didn't want to rush you guys, but also wanted to get to some of these questions. So I think that, Eliza, you already kind of talked about this, but has the pandemic changed your writing process?
Yeah, for me, let's see. It definitely made it horrible. I always am an emotional writer, especially a drafter. I like it usually like I'm like super tearful. Like I'm like crying, because the hard thing about writing is you're facing up to like your inadequacies all the time. You're dredging up stuff from your past to try to like give a story. Like I'm like sometimes like, you know, like finding stuff from my own anxieties or like my own experiences. So having all of this stuff on top of that made writing feel a lot more traumatic this year. But like, I also think that now I've gotten to the point where like I'm doing better with it. And I guess the nice thing about it is like before I had to fit it in around a job, and now I don't have another job.
That makes it easier.
Because of the pit. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, just because of it. Yeah. What about you, Steph?
I would say from a practical or logistical perspective, it hasn't really changed much. I mean, I definitely have no excuses now not to get the writing done because there's nothing else going on. In London, we're in our third lockdown, so like nothing is open here. But yeah, from a mental perspective, I think it's been much harder. Just the feeling of like you're living the same day over and over, you know, like sitting in front of the computer, and then like you go and have dinner, and then, you know, like you go to sleep, you watch whatever. I think the way, which I didn't realize until the pandemic, the way that I like feel good about spending most of my time in front of a screen, just like by myself, is travel and like going and seeing other people. And so when all of that is taken away, you just start to feel like my entire world is this screen. So that has been hard, but no different from, I don't think that's specific to a writer. I'm sure that's true of, most people at this point.
I also add one thing. That question was from Elizabeth Everett, whose novel, Lady's Formula for Love, is coming out this year. And I had the chance to have an early read, and it's amazing.
Yay! But, congratulations!
Sciencey women, and it's awesome.
That's awesome. Okay, so Larry was wondering, hold on, there it is. What are you currently reading? Any recommendations? Well, clearly there was just one, Elizabeth's novel.
Yes. I am reading right now Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which reminds me of The Haunting of Hill House. Like, it's very much like a Halloween-y, like spooky, what's going on. It's two stories. So basically this family like moves into this giant house in Vermont that has a creepy past. And one storyline is like the father's perspective, who wrote this best-selling, supposedly true story about the house. And the other perspective is like decades later, his daughter, who's now grown, is like going back and investigating. So that one, I'm not through it yet, but it's a very fast read and like super absorbing.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites, Riley Sager. He's great. His new book is on my short list to get to very soon. So yeah, he's terrific. How about you, Eliza?
I am currently reading, I'm trying to find, okay, so I just worked at the Net Galley for another novel that's coming out this year. It's called The Other Me, and it's by Sarah Zacharick Zheng. And it's like a story about, those like sort of like alternate lives. So it's like someone who was like a failed, or I'll read it from this. An edge of your seat story of a failed artist who accidentally opens a door to an alternate reality where she never pursued her dreams and must uncover the forces behind the switch before it's too late, I guess. Yeah, so that's like another Berkeley author, and it's coming out this year, and it sounds really awesome. Like, I know a lot of people are like loving like the alternate reality stories this year. Like, there's been like, a lot of like kind of Groundhog Day stories, because I think a lot of us are thinking about another reality.
I also think it's so interesting to think about just like the different lives that you won't lead, but like could have if you had made like A, B, and C different choices. Like, that's always really intriguing to me.
I think that in another life I'm you, so.
It sounds like it. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll go work at a horse ranch after this.
Oh my gosh, I don't recommend it, but.
I will also give a shout out, just not just because she's watching, but May Cobb has an awesome book coming out in May, Hunting Wives.
Yay,
That's another Berkeley release, and we love her, and we're so excited about that book.
Did you read it, Steph? Have you read it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's like, I read it. It's like a like this like Texas like thriller, like super like kind of larger than life female characters. Like, I absolutely adore it. Like, I like them. I guess like the main like baddie, can I say, Margot, is like so cool. It's like my perfect, like, I just love that role, So it's so fun. It's like I think it's a cover this year, and it has the most like beautiful cover also.
I know.
Yeah, it's got a killer cover.
I had cover envy, but my cover's good too. So
your cover's great. Both of you have great covers. Awesome. Yeah. So we will, just since I have to say this, we will be doing signed and personalized copies, because May lives in Austin and she'll be dropping over for to sign books when that comes out. But we're very excited for her. Okay, Larry was wondering, do you have a favorite true crime podcast? I know you already dropped a couple big ones in there, but either one of you have favorites?
Eliza, you might want to take it away. Okay, so I used to be like a huge podcast person, true crime and otherwise, but then I felt like I was just like, it was too much input and it wasn't leaving any quiet time for my brain to just like think creatively, like solve problems in my own book. So I haven't been listening to podcasts lately, I will admit.
So yeah, I could not ever like pick a favorite, like forget it. I think there's different ones at different times, but like I, of course, like I love My Favorite Murder, Crime Junkie. I really like Dateline. Like I find it so comforting in their storytelling. Like I love how like almost like camp and over the top it is. Like it's just like so like how they and then Keith Morrison's like sonorous voice. And then I also think that Uncover is really good if you want to look at like kind of like the human side of these things. They do a lot of like interviews. They really like immerse you in whatever whatever sort of like world they're talking about. And like really talk about, I feel like the impact and the gray areas surrounding like, I guess, like, I mean, they do the Nixium cults, they do like Satanic Panic. So it's like, I mean, these, and the cool thing about these in a way, like as an author, is that they definitely give you ideas and they really teach you a lot about like, I guess, human nature and about people,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have like, I mean, and then there's always like so many good ones that pop up too, like, all the time.
The limited series ones. There was one called Cold. I might be, this is like probably everyone's like, yeah, we listened to that 3 years ago, Steph.
No, that one's really scary.
At the time I was training for a race and it was just like every day for like 2 weeks, I just like forgot that I was even running. I was just like so absorbed. And usually like the husband and wife ones like don't really get me because I know this is like really weird, but I'm like, no, I need something like different, like I want a more like original crime or like a more unique one because it's like, it's always the husband. But that one like really got me.
It is always the husband.
Yeah, basically. I was not asked, but I'm going to join in. My favorite one is that deals actually, she does limited series about historical true crimes. And so it's You Must Remember This by Karina Longworth. Oh my God, her series on the Manson killings and her series on the Black Dahlia and the series of murders with that are incredible. And she sets the, like, you feel like you're in 1950s LA. It's amazing. So,
and she talks about like just like Hollywood lore as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I sometimes skip over those and do like the true crime ones, but
like, let's get to the murders, please.
I think the one is like the most popular one, but but like such obscure Hollywood stuff that you're just like, wow, this is like, I never like, I mean all such compelling stories. So
her like grand dames of like the big screens, you can just kind of pick and choose which ones sound better to you and do those, but she does great series. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. I actually don't have any more questions. I think we covered them. People have really been enjoying this chat. Hi Lauren, thank you for setting this up. We love you guys at Berkeley. So I guess I'll give another shout out. Darling Rose Gold nominated for the Edgar Award out in paperback. We have signed book plates available. Yay. If I Disappear is brand new in hardcover. Also signed book plates, and she has it on her shirt too. Not gonna lie, like that's.
you really.
There you go. So there's a link if you have any if you have any interest. There's more information at the link and an opportunity to order. We love that you're watching these events. We would appreciate you considering ordering a book from us so we can keep these coming. But anyway, there's my 2 cents on that. All right, you guys, thank you so much. This was wonderful. I love the energy. I love the enthusiasm, and I can't wait to read more from both of you. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you
too. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Bye.
Jinx. Bye.
Bye.